School Center love. So I'd like to start out by having you just take a moment and think about a cherished memory of childhood play. That's yours. Now raise your hand if that play occurred outdoors. Okay, now look around at all the hands. Throughout human history, outdoor play has defined childhood until recently. Today, the average American child spends about 1% of their free time outdoors. And that amounts to about 30 minutes of outdoor playtime per week. And when you compare that to the 7.5 hours per day the average American child spends in front of screens, you realize just how dramatically the nature of childhood has changed. Childhood has retreated indoors. And what I want to know is, what does this mean for our future? If kids aren't outdoors getting, dirty knees and bruises, climbing trees and digging up worms, who's going to grow up and advocate for the bats and the birds and the butterflies? Who is going to have the will and the passion to tackle the increasingly complex environmental challenges that our society faces? This really concerns me. And the problem is bigger. So it affects our communities. If our neighbors aren't out in their local parks meeting their neighbors, what does that mean for social capital in our communities? And as our lifestyle becomes more sedentary, this has really significant impacts on our children's present and future health and well-being. So, getting kids outside in Philly parks and their local parks is a really important issue for me, and it speaks to the heart of the mission of the Schuylkill Center, which is to inspire meaningful connections between people and nature. But this issue is way too big to tackle, for the Schuylkill Center to tackle alone. I mean, there are some really complex barriers across all social and economic demographic groups. And so when I was thinking about solution to this problem, I had to think bigger across this, all systems in the city. And so here I have our goals in the middle. So we want to get more Philadelphia families out into their local parks and trails. And I thought about, what are all the outcomes of that goal? And then who are all the stakeholders who have vested interests in all of those outcomes? So it's not just, if I was just focused on nature connection of the Schuylkill Center, there's environmental orgs. We're all by ourselves down there. We're the only people who care. But if I look at all the outcomes, then suddenly I have a bunch of allies, right? And so there are about 25 organizations, agencies, and institutions that I was talking with who were really excited about this idea of collaborating on getting kids outdoors as a strategy for helping them reach their outcomes, their desired outcomes in their work. And so we sort of started talking about, what if pediatricians actually prescribed to patients and helped them find their nearest safe and accessible parks, trails, and green space where they lived. And so we spent about 3 months trying to figure this out, and here's what we came up with. We're calling it Nature RX. There were 4 partners who really sort of rose to leadership to launch this initiative. Philly Parks and Recreation and the Schuylkill Center were auditing every park, trail, and green space in Philadelphia for its accessibility and amenities. We're creating a searchable database that clinicians and patients and the public can use to find their local safe and accessible park, trail, or green space. CHOP is we're piloting it with CHOP, and here's how it'll work. So physicians will be counseling patients on the health benefits of outdoor play. They'll be providing nature prescriptions and resources using the database, and then they'll actually be screening and referring patients to what we call a nature navigator, who will provide individualized support and navigation for families. And this is the piece of the initiative that's really exciting to me, because not only are we helping to close knowledge and information gaps, but we're actually going to be continuing to work with families after they leave the physician's office to provide them with additional support to help them get from the physician's office to the park. And that's really where the rubber meets the road, right? That's the hard part. So we're also collaborating with libraries, rec centers, neighborhood centers to carry the message of Nature RX from the physician's office into the communities. And this is an experiment. So we don't know what's going to happen, and we're working with our academic partners to study what aspects of the initiative, what works and what doesn't work. And ultimately, if we find strategies that really do increase the amount of time that families spend in parks, then the goal is to scale up the initiative to health institutions citywide. And what's most exciting to me about NatureRx in the end is this cross-sector collaboration where we have health institutions, environmental organizations, social services in the city working together and striving to find a more effective and impactful solution to the unique challenges we each face. Thank you.